think for a lot of the films before, in the X-Men movies and in the first Wolverine, it was this whole idea of him having lost his memory and the burden of not knowing, living for 200 years, knowing you've done some pretty bad stuff, but not quite being sure what it was. And I was like, we were all like, we're done with that. I mean, look, it's interesting, it's fascinating, but we can't do that again. And then Chris McQuarrie came up with this idea, which actually is very powerful and a great way to really understand who someone is and why they're living and what they're living for. I've always said in a way that what interests me about him is his human side, not his superhuman side. Sure, he has claws and he can heal, which is great, but actually, of his superhuman qualities, the defining one, I would say his greatest power is a very human quality of the berserker rage, this inner rage within him. And you can't just go, wow, it's cool, look at all that anger, and look, he's badass, and what causes that, you know, and where does that come from? And it's important to kind of see that too. You know, he is reluctant. He's the reluctant hero. He's also quite the tragic hero. And in the comic book lore, one of the first anti-heroes ever really that was brought to life that became that popular. And I think audiences now like that complexity. I like it. I think when I was young, that's cool. That's sort of that type of character. I think if you think Dirty Harry or Mad Max when I was growing up, that stuff will always be around. We love that. Getting Jim Mangold on board as director was, I think, the masterstroke for this movie because he is, of course, understands big movies. He's done every genre known to man successfully, but he gets great performances. He's really good on the emotional arc of a story, of character, of plot. And I don't know about you, but big action scenes, as good as they are, big special effects, I can only watch that for a certain amount of time before I switch off if I'm not involved, if I'm not interested in the story. So Jim, his focus is always about serving the story. And we had, by the way, an incredible action sequence that ended up getting sort of not cut, but largely cut down because he said, this doesn't propel the story. And it was difficult because it took us ages to shoot it. It was pretty spectacular. You can actually see shots of it in the trailer. But I loved his commitment to the movie as a whole. You know, that I will never forget filming in Japan because when you're filming a story about Japan, obviously you're going to the most incredible locations. You are seeing the best of Japan. And we got to see all of Japan, not just Tokyo, but we went to Tomonora, which is 4 hours on the bullet train. We were in a little fishing village. I remember we checked into the hotel and I hadn't said anything, but someone had obviously forwarded them my diet that I have and said, you know, can you help out? So when I checked in, they were just very apologetic. And I said, what's the matter? They said, your Western breakfast? Western breakfast. 3 days notice, please. 3 days. And I was like, it's just an egg. It's just like eggs. It's not that. But we were way out of our normal comfort zone. I can tell you that this is sort of X-Men Avengers style. This is by far the biggest. It's a really, really intelligent, great idea. It takes place in the future and the past. Wolverine traverses both of those time zones because he can heal, so the same actor can play it, whereas everyone else, you get two actors playing the same part. So for fans of the X-Men series, whether it be First Class or whether it be the original X-Men series, it's sort of like the ultimate, really. And it is very dramatic, it's funny, and I'd say it's Bryan Singer at his best. We've always been good friends, and we remain good friends after X-Men 2 and in touch a lot. And, you know, he's got a lot of experience now, and he has a lot of confidence. And Bryan, didn't just create X-Men, I think he resurrected the comic book genre. Because X-Men was the first, Spider-Man came, all of those came after, and that's when people sat up and went, oh, we can have a comic book movie that is actually dramatic, that is actually serious, that is actually human. And so to have him back helming this is so great for the fans and for, I think, people who love movies.